Grizzly Mug.
This is Checkpoint XP, esports and gaming radio. CheckpointXP.com.
Welcome back to Checkpoint XP Daily, your home for esports and gaming. I want to thank everyone listening on the Hawk 1340 in Wenatchee, Washington, as well as the Fan 97.1 in Columbus, Ohio. Check out our website over at CheckpointXP.com, and while you're there, make sure you sign up for the Checkpoint XP Nation newsletter. Get behind-the-scenes insight, photos, and access to contests and unique content. All it takes is an email address and zip code. So sign up today at CheckpointXP.com. Hey, welcome into Checkpoint XP, your home for esports and gaming. Joining us is Grizzly Mug. He's the director of the Red Bull Gaming documentary Against the Odds. Grizzly, thanks for joining us on Checkpoint XP.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
But tell us about the documentary Against All Odds. What is the story that is being told here?
Right. Yeah. So I think, you know, there's the pitch, right? So the story is about this team that goes to the International, which is DOTA2's biggest tournament of the year, so the Super Bowl of Dota 2. And the most unlikeliest of stories, right? This team that just formed months before that goes on to compete in the International, and spoiler alert, they win the whole thing. And the fact that they did that, the way they did that, is what the documentary is essentially, you know, that's the sort of quick pitch, right? But the story in this documentary is actually goes much deeper than that, right? We start almost 8 years before the International, starting with these two best friends. Their names, their gamer handles being Fly and Notale. Mm-hmm. These guys have played together since the Han days, and they grind through Dota 2 together. And at some point decide to form what we know now as OG. And the documentary covers essentially the history of OG and their friendship, right? And so if you're not familiar with esports, if you're not familiar with the International, that's okay, because really what this story about is friendship and how that can be tried by going through an experience, which is competing at the highest level.
Well, and that's one of the storylines that ends up playing out. You know, they win 4 majors in a row, and then they lose at that International. And despite all of the different heights that the team is able to get to, they've done something, you know, no other team has done at that point. They still can't climb the mountain of the International. And to watch, you know, them get so close, and then, you know, kind of the unraveling of the team right before their epic final run at TI8. I mean, you can't write this kind of drama.
No, you can't. Yeah, and you know, what's interesting is going into the story, I knew sort of the bullet points. I knew sort of, you know, okay, these two best friends who've been together forever, you know, they go their separate ways. Now this forces Notale, who's still with OG, to form a new team to try to make a run at TI8 with, you know, months to go. I knew all the bullet points. What I didn't get until I started the interviews and dug deeper into the story is really how important some of these other players, you know, like Sebastian, Seb, or Jerax, right?
Sure.
When you start weaving through those narratives, you realize that a story you thought already, you know, you couldn't write this stuff, gets even better. Yeah, I mean, it just, the way it comes together in the end, it's just, yeah, it's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things I want to hit on is kind of that story about, you know, Notale and Fly, these guys who were really good friends going into it, and throughout a lot of it, you have to kind of shift gears when the split happens there. And I'm just wondering, you know, as a director, what is it like trying to capture what had to be an extremely emotional time for Notale. What is it like trying to capture that and present it in a way that is, you know, still respectful and yet compelling?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so you know, gamers can be pretty precious with how they feel about things, right? They're very focused individuals, are extremely competitive, but they spend a lot of time in their bedrooms training alone. And so going into any interview with a professional gamer is already going to be something that I have to help them get comfortable with, right?
Sure.
They may not even want to be in the interview. With OG, that wasn't the case. They were all in from the beginning. I mean, maybe it helped that I've been fortunate enough to work with other programmers and use some of my work. But they were like, you know, man, whatever it takes, we're here. Having said that, absolutely. I went in and basically did not broach the subject of Notale and Fly going their separate ways till the very end, right? So I tried to basically get through everything and save the hard parts for last. And yeah, that was hard for me. I mean, anyone can relate to, you know, having someone in your life that you really care about, and all of a sudden not knowing what to do when that person isn't in your life anymore. And you know, what's interesting is Notale is always been a very, very outgoing person, very personable. You can kind of see it early on in his career, even in the documentary. And this is a high energy, you know, very likable guy. And here we were, I'm asking him questions, and this guy has just won TI8. This has been his dream his whole life. And yet you feel the heaviness, right, of that one thing. So yeah, it was definitely challenging, but at the same time, props to all the guys, because, you know, it wasn't just Notale. It was really the whole team that was dealing with that, specifically Jerax and Seb as well, because they had been with the same, you know, 4 guys for like 4 years, right? But you know, props to them. It was difficult, but never did they hold back and say, like, you know, I don't want to talk about this, or I don't want to talk about that. So and you know, what's interesting is I still struggle when I watch that part of the documentary. I mean, I've seen this thing 100 times, right? And I'm working on it for almost a year now. And because it's difficult, man. That's real life.
It's
right?
It's real human drama. You can't write that kind of stuff.
And we've all had that moment where someone we've, you know, depended on for a long time is gone, and you've had to part ways.
Yeah,
it's tough.
Exactly. You're listening to Checkpoint XP Esports and Gaming Radio. We're sitting down with GrizzlyMug. He's the director of the Red Bull gaming documentary Against the Odds. And you know, one of the things that you had talked about, Grizzly, a moment ago was you know, some of the ancillary stories that kind of you know, act as satellites around the core story. And I want to talk about Anna for just a moment, because he had a really fascinating arc, and it gave me pause as someone who comments on esports, because I don't think we sometimes realize, like, these are young kids whose performance we're breaking down in sometimes very, very harsh ways, and I found his struggle and then, you know, ability to rise above being challenged by the haters and the criticism so interesting.
Right. Yeah. You know, kind of the difference with the work that I get to do in esports, and maybe some of the great content that's being produced by teams, is that a lot of times I get to travel to these players' homes, right, and meet their families. You get really aware of not just the challenges of being a competitor, right? Being a competitor in anything is going to be difficult if you want to be the best.
Yeah.
But on top of that, these are guys who are dealing with issues that maybe traditional sports aren't dealing with, and that's maybe their families and communities not understanding or supporting what they're doing, right? So there's all these other challenges, but absolutely the biggest challenge would be that these guys live online, right? I mean, the access is 24/7. They're going to be exposed to it one way or another. And yeah, it's really easy to forget that part of it. And I felt that really strongly that we needed to tell that story. You know, I think they all went through it, but Anna specifically just took it a lot harder than maybe the other guys.
Sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's something that yeah, just like you said, it gives you pause.
Yeah, well, but to see the other side of it and to see him overcome it and to rise above it, I thought was really inspiring. I think that that's something that, you know, kids, no matter if they're involved in esports or not, I think that that's a message that they can really, you know, that really resonates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to ask, because one of the things that you got to do, partnering with Red Bull Gaming to make this kind of all happen, I need to ask how the partnership came about and what it was like working with them.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, Red Bull is basically a leader in the space in terms of content, right? Relatively speaking, they've gone bigger than anyone else up to this point. Again, excluding you know, teams, orgs, own teams that produce content. And I've been trying to do something with them for years now. Because they are so invested in doing such great stuff. And I had for years now also been working with Valve. So I knew the ins and outs of working with Valve. I knew, you know, the world basically, right? Both CSGO and Dota, work in both. And so we'd been talking, I had a conversation early on before TI8, and it was like, wow, you know, we just found out our team's breaking up and we don't know what's going to happen. And I said, well, you know, I'll be at TI8, you know, let's hope for the best. But even then I wasn't thinking there. I mean, no way. No one was thinking what would happen, right?
Right.
So when they did win, it was sort of just a connect the dots moment. I was like, guys, you know, I worked with Valve, you know, looking for a great opportunity, and here it is. And what a story, right? Like, how could you not want to tell that story?
Absolutely.
For sure. And I mean, it's worth noting too that the story, as we now know, continues because one of the closing slates of the documentary is that OG fields the same roster at TI9, and we now know they win that one
back-to-back victories. Yeah.
I mean,
That's
just
right.
As a question to you, do you feel like that's just a testament to how good that team is and how well they communicate with each other?
100%. Yes. We did, you know, as is the case in a lot of feature-length documentaries, you always do follow-up interviews closer to when you're finishing, kind of filling holes. So I'd seen the guys actually, ironically, at Birmingham a month before TI9. And it was interesting because that's where the team had broken up a year ago. And so they were actually going through some of those paces, you know, being at Birmingham again, this time not a major. And they were talking like a team that was super comfortable with each other. We're already, you know, thinking about what they were going to be doing at TI9. And what's also interesting is actually that Anna, after TI8, had taken a break, right? So we got to see what OG looked like without Anna. But I think it was always planned. I don't know for sure, but I think it was always planned for Anna to come back. And when I saw them at Birmingham just before TI9, they were all together, and yeah, you could tell these guys, having been through what they went through together, that was going to be a difference maker. You know, regardless of whether they won or not, this wasn't a team that was going to go quietly.
Because again, just this team that, you know, for TI8 at least, kind of skimped by and barely qualified, and then lose a couple members of their team right before the event. They have to convert a coach into a player at that point, bring on a new coach, and then bring on someone else who
go up against former friends,
and bring on someone with very little competitive experience. But every domino in that should say absolutely not. And for it to all to come together, you couldn't write a better story. The truth is stranger than fiction sometimes.
Absolutely. Grizzly Mug, director of the Red Bull Gaming documentary Against the Odds, has been our guest. Make sure you check it out. It's available on YouTube as well as through Red Bull Gaming as well. Watch it. It is so fantastic. I cannot speak highly enough of this. It is just a fantastic story. Grizzly man, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thanks again to Grizzly Mug for his time. For full interviews, make sure you visit our website over at CheckpointXP.com. That's going to do it for Checkpoint XP Daily, the first internationally syndicated show on esports and gaming for radio. Visit our website, CheckpointXP.com, for insight on esports and gaming, as well as a wide collection of podcasts and interviews. Join us Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern, live at twitch.tv/CheckpointXP. Our theme is provided by the band Weird at Last. Find more at WeirdAtLast.com. Checkpoint XP Daily is a production of Beasley Esports XP. Lead segment producing by Joe Sloan. Brand management by Chad Callahan. And, of course, my co-hosts who pull double duty as producers for Checkpoint XP Daily. Robbie Landis, Norris Howard, and Joe Sloan. My name's Ray Bender. Keep listening.